against an increasingly assertive China. The Chinese military already has gained access to the Solomon Islands, plus the pact between China and the Solomon Islands. Their terms, negotiations and details on the military activities lack transparency and clarity. Such an alliance now could pose a threat to Guam and to Australia, which of course, as we know, is a key US ally. Although the cancellation of his trip is seen as a setback for America's foreign policy, Biden's shifting priorities is being hailed ahead of the upcoming presidential election next year.
I'm cutting my trip short. I'm postponing the Australia portion of the trip and my stop in Papua New Guinea to be back for the final negotiations with congressional leaders. And I spoke today with Prime Minister Albanese of Australia and a short time ago and let him know what was going on. There was an overwhelming consensus, I think, in today's meeting, the congressional leaders, that defaulting on the debt is simply not an option. Our economy would fall into recession. It would devastate retirement accounts, increase borrowing costs, and according to Moody's, nearly 8 million Americans would lose their jobs and our international reputation would be damaged in the extreme if we were to let that happen.
The Quad Leaders meeting will not be going ahead in Sydney next week. We, though, will be having that discussion between Quad leaders in Japan. I thank Prime Minister Kishida for his invitation for me to attend the G7, and it is appropriate that we talk.
Now, Joe Biden has found himself caught in a catch-22 situation. The political risks of Biden leaving the country 2 weeks before a potentially damaging financial crisis are high. And if talks founder over the next few days, Republicans will likely accuse him of caring more about hanging out with foreigners than Americans. Back at home, Biden assures that the negotiators would continue to make progress on avoiding a default. But the House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, claims that the two sides remained far apart on an agreement to lift the debt ceiling.
We just finished another good, productive meeting with our congressional leadership about a path forward to make sure that America does not default on its debt. Well, there's still work to do, but I made it clear to the Speaker and others that we'll speak regularly over the next several days and to make sure we do not default. I'm confident we're going to continue to make progress toward avoiding default and fulfilling America's responsibility as a leader on the world stage. There was an overwhelming consensus, I think, in today's meeting, the congressional leaders, that defaulting on the debt is simply not an option. Our economy would fall into recession. It would devastate retirement accounts, increase borrowing costs, and according to Moody's, nearly 8 million Americans would lose their jobs and our international reputation would be damaged in the extreme if we were to let that happen. It's disappointing that our discussions in the congressional Republicans have not been willing to discuss raising revenues, but the policy differences between the parties should not stop Congress from avoiding default. I made clear again today's meeting that default is not an option. America pays its debts, pays its bills, and there will be plenty of time to debate the policy differences. But the country we've never defaulted on our debt, and we never will.
I think we set the stage to carry on further conversations. You know, we only have 15 days really to go. We've got to find a way that we can curve our spending, raise our debt limit, and also grow our economy. And the president agreed to appoint a couple people from his administration to sit down and negotiate directly with my team, so I found that to be productive personally. But we've got a lot of work to do in a short amount of time. It is possible to get a deal by the end of the week. It's not that difficult to get to an agreement.
The bottom line is that we all came to agreement that we were going to continue discussions in the way that I believe Speaker McCarthy described, which was agreed to by all of us in the room together. And hopefully we can come to an agreement. We don't have much time, but default is just the worst alternative. And having a bipartisan bill in both chambers is the only way we're going to avoid default. Hakeem and I are committed to trying to get that bipartisan bill done.
Hello.
All right, so can the United States avoid a default situation? Also, what sort of an impact will this have as far as the United States and its diplomatic relations are concerned? Let's try and delve deeper, and for that, let me also introduce my guests. I'm joined in by Sarang Shidor, who's the Director of Studies and Senior Research Fellow at the Quincy Institute. Thank you, Sarang, for joining in. Also joining me is Mr. John Kirby, who's the former Dean of Miami Herbert Business School. Thank you so much, John, for joining in. John, if I may begin with you, this negotiation is on the budget, not whether to default. That's what President Joe Biden has just said in the recent comments that we are breaking right now. Does that mean the debt ceiling is non-negotiable and that a separate budget process will be required?
Just to give you some background, the debt was $3 trillion in the United States in 1989. It's increased tenfold in the last 33 years to now $31.4 trillion. And what we're looking at the moment is a budget deficit this year of $1.54 trillion. The Republicans have already passed a bill earlier this year that would increase the debt ceiling by 1.5 trillion, but tied to a number of requirements in terms of government savings. Normally, the debt ceiling is raised in a clean fashion without being tied to obligations around revenues or reductions in government expenditures. On this occasion, because the Republicans now control the U.S. House of Representatives, they're playing hardball with the White House to try and extract some concessions. That's the background that we're looking at here.
Right, and when I asked you, what does he mean when he says that that's non-negotiable? Are we looking at a separate budget process?
What we're looking at here is, first of all, the debt ceiling has to be raised. Both the president and the Republicans agree with that. What is at stake is the side deal that will be negotiated to facilitate the budget deficit increase. So that side bill is what is on the table in terms of the negotiations between the White House representatives and the Republican representatives. The White House also represented by, of course, the leader of the Senate and the leader of the Democratic minority in the House of Representatives. So all of these people have agreed on the end result. The question is the horse trading, how the sausage is going to be made over the next 2 weeks, who's going to get what. But both sides will need to come out to the microphones to be able to claim some kind of victory to their supporters.
Right. In fact, we'll try and delve deeper into who's going to get what. In the meantime, Sarang, let's also come to the diplomatic impact of the debt ceiling crisis. What's the message being sent out abroad?
His reputation when the president's commitment to
do not look too good. But having said that, should just be limited to the wrangling within the US Congress, because everybody is wondering what this default could mean, not just for the United States, but also for the world.
Well, for the United States to default would be catastrophic because it would result in an immediate lack of confidence in the markets. The interest rates would soar, affecting consumer borrowing costs, and the contagion would spread quickly internationally. So there's no doubt that as the major reserve currency in the world, the currency that 85% of all international transactions are settled in, the US dollar, it cannot afford to lose credibility and lose trust through a default. So that's simply not going to happen. I mean, on the political front, I would say while agreeing with Salam that every elected political leader at some point or another usually has a domestic problem that results in some change in international travel plans. I would not read too much into this. It's a little bit embarrassing, but what's more embarrassing is the fact that this problem pops up every year, and we need a better budgeting process in the United States to avoid the constant annual charade of this, down to the wire negotiation.
I'm in fact going to take my next question based on how frequently this has been happening. But before that, let me come to Sarang. Sarang, at a time when China is taking on the mantle of playing global peacemaker in Ukraine after the recent Saudi-Iran deal, their representative is already on a tour to Ukraine and Russia as we speak. How do you assess the geopolitical outcome of Biden's decision to cancel the Quad meet, a grouping that in fact was created to counter China's clout in the Indo-Pacific?
Right. So here I would say that the structural, longer-term, deeper impacts of one visit being cancelled, where the substantive meeting anyway will likely be held, is not large. So essentially, this is again perception, optics, impact. Of course, I'm assuming that there will not be a default. If there's a default, there are substantial material impacts, as our other guest has laid out. But assuming that this is just a cancellation of a single summit in Australia and the work continues, I don't think this will have a major impact in terms of the question you asked, that there are other issues that are much more important than Biden not showing up in Australia.
Plenty of scenarios are publicly and privately being debated and gamed out, but no one knows for sure. Just how does this debt limit standoff end? What are the possibilities that you see through your experience?
So I think that there are 2 or 3 things that have already essentially been agreed upon. There is around about a $58 billion figure attached to unspent relief money that was voted by the Congress as part of the COVID relief package, but that has not yet been spent by state governments in the US, and that can be clawed back. There's also a strong interest in accelerating and easing permitting processes for infrastructure projects, especially energy infrastructure, which both parties have agreed upon as being a very high priority for the US, having passed a significant infrastructure bill last year. So there are definitely areas of agreement that I think have already been arrived at. Where the Democrats are always very reluctant to allow backsliding is in the case of legislation that they have passed in the last couple of years that represent their legislative achievements. And going into the 2024 election, President Biden can't afford to be giving up or be seen to be giving up on achievements that he has marked up in the last 2 to 3 years. So I think that that's where there's going to be the rub. I think it is going to come down to the wire or close to the wire. And that is why the president has underscored the importance of getting back to Washington for the last 7 days before the alleged June 1 deadline, which may or may not actually be the actual deadline. It might,
but still, it's in fact just a fortnight away. And as you rightly mentioned, this is a very crucial year for the United States because, as we all know, the US is headed into election next year. Many thanks to you both, gentlemen, for joining in on this discussion. And with that, I shift my focus over to Ukraine, to the ongoing war, which claims to have liberated substantial areas to the north and south of the embattled eastern city of Bakhmut in Donetsk region. Now, according to Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister, 20 square kilometers of the Bakhmut suburbs in the north and south of the city have been freed. But Oleksiy Gorochenko, the Ukrainian MP that we are going to be speaking to earlier as well, had pointed out that the main territory that's been liberated is in fact surrounding Bakhmut and not inside Bakhmut. Now, it's also been acknowledged that Russia is making advances in Bakhmut, bringing in paratroopers and destroying the city with artillery. The Russian side is yet to comment on Bakhmut, but seems like they are occupied with a possible internal rift within the military. The chief of Wagner Group has laid bare the power struggle at the top of Russia's military leadership. Apart from calling Russian commanders stupid and responsible for criminal orders, Prigozhin even took a veiled aim at Russian president himself, referring to the happy grandfather who thought the war in Ukraine was proceeding smoothly. Listen in to the reactions that have come in.
Nobody knew this town, even in Ukraine before. It is not that significant, it's not that big. But how many lives were lost? I believe that will come into history books. Because we are 18 times smaller than Russia, we have to find our strength to fight back. We have to fight our soldiers among the civilians. That's what we're doing right now. We're training them. So we don't want the enemy know how much reserves we still have. But we have enough. The million people were already trained and went through the war effort, this huge army.
All right, and joining me live right now is Ukrainian MP Alexei Goncharenko, who's joining me live from Kiev. Many thanks to you, Alexei, for joining in. Now, the Russian Defense Ministry has debunked claims of Ukraine reclaiming parts of territory in Bakhmut. Will Ukraine be able to substantiate its claims in the coming days?
The situation is the next. Ukraine is claiming back and reconquering the territories around Bakhmut. And in Bakhmut itself, Russia is advancing. But still, the small part of Bakhmut is still controlled by Ukraine. But around Bakhmut, Ukraine reconquered during the last days several square miles.
Right. Alexei, it's interesting that you clarify the territory that's being reclaimed is around Bakhmut and not so much inside. But when we speak of the defense breakthroughs around Bakhmut, how much of a role has been played by our allies, especially in Europe and the United States?
Certainly, we are very thankful for all support Ukraine is receiving, and that is vital for us. And we need this weaponry. But people are fighting. That's about the courage of people. And nobody is fighting for Ukraine, just Ukrainians. So first of all, the successes that we have, that is in the hands of our army, but also definitely in the weaponry that we are receiving from our allies. And we are very thankful for what we have received and what we hope that we will receive in future.
Alexei, the Wagner chief has accused the Russian army of fleeing the battlefield in eastern Ukraine. Is that a factor that's also aiding Ukraine with territorial gains?
Yeah, we see the mess inside Russian army. One group, Wagner group, is attacking another group's Ministry of Defense and official army. And there is a lot of claims in both directions. And I don't know how they live in one country and how they try to fight together. It's quite hard to imagine. Definitely, it makes them weaker. I will not go inside. Who is running away? Who is better? Who is worse? For us, all of them are occupants, and we are going to kill all of them or to kick them out from our country.
Now, many have accused Vladimir Putin of fighting in Bakhmut for the sake of satisfying his own ego. Is there strategic significance to Bakhmut, or has this battle become largely symbolic for Russia?
Yes, it is more symbolic because no special strategic significance. There is nothing. That is a town, 70,000 population before invasion. But Russia attacks this town from July of last year. So it soon will be 1 year that they try to take Bakhmut. And that can be their first success from July of last year. So that's why I think they try so hard to receive some success. That's why they are losing thousands and thousands of people near and in Bakhmut. And that it shows that for Russia, people, mean absolutely nothing.
Alexei, how do you weigh in on China's peace mediation prospects?
I'm not very optimistic about this Chinese intervention. Because if China really wants peace in Ukraine, they can just tell this to Putin and he would need to stop the war. Because in reality, Russia today is China's vassal.
Right. In fact, as we speak, the Chinese representative of Eurasian Affairs is visiting Ukraine and will visit Russia too. Will China be able to present a peace solution that also incorporates Ukrainian interests and concerns?
It's very easy to reach the peace. Russia needs to leave Ukrainian territory. Everything else, I don't know how it will take us to the peace. So I'm not very optimistic about Chinese intervention, but if they want to try, let's give them this possibility. And if they really want to help to achieve peace, they can do it. But I'm quite skeptical about this.
All right, Alexei, my last question to you. President Xi's peace plan is one that favors Russia and makes no mention of Russia returning Ukraine's territory. In such a scenario, can China help in restoring Ukrainian integrity at all?
Absolutely. How we can achieve the peace? We need to restore international law. It means to restore Ukrainian territorial integrity. Russia acknowledged our borders, and now they just need to leave our country and we will have peace. Everything else can be just at maximum a ceasefire, because before Russia will leave our territory, international law will be violated and international order will be violated. That is something which will have very bad consequences for the whole planet.
All right. I think we'll have to leave it at that. Many thanks to you, Alexei, for joining in on CNN News 18 Global. And with that, let's shift focus over to the future of humanity. The creator of advanced chatbot ChatGPT has called on US lawmakers to regulate artificial intelligence. Now, the CEO of OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, Sam Altman, has testified before a US Senate committee about the possibilities and pitfalls of the new technology. He said that a new agency should be formed to license AI companies. ChatGPT and other similar programs can create incredibly human-like answers to questions, but can also be wildly inaccurate. Now, the swift growth of artificial intelligence technology could put the future of humanity at risk. Could AI single-handedly decide the course of our history? Most Americans believe so, and which is where I come to the crux of today's story. According to a survey by Reuters Ipsos, more than 2/3 of Americans are concerned about the negative effects of AI. In fact, 61% of Americans believe AI could threaten civilization and the future of humanity. And according to Elon Musk, there's some chance that AI might go wrong and destroy humanity. Let's listen into what Sam Altman has to say with regards to AI, even Elon Musk.
My worst fears are that we, the field, the technology, the industry, cause significant harm to the world. I think that can happen in a lot of different ways. It's why we started the company.
Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Big part of why I'm here today, and why we've been here in the past and been able to spend some time with you. I think if this technology goes wrong, it can go quite wrong, and we want to be vocal about that. We want to work with the government to prevent that from happening, but we try to be very clear-eyed about what the downside case is and the work that we have to do to mitigate that.
The advent of artificial general intelligence is called a singularity because it is so hard to predict what will happen after that. I think it's very much a double-edged sword. I think there's a strong probability that it will make life much better, and that we'll have an age of abundance. And there's some chance that it goes wrong and destroys humanity. Hopefully that chance is small, but it's not zero.
All right, let's try and weigh in on the risks and advantages of AI and what that could mean for the future of humanity. And for that, let me introduce my guest today. I'm joined in by Sultan Meghji, who is a professor and with special focus on artificial intelligence at the Duke University. Many thanks to you, Sultan, for joining in. You heard what Altman and Elon Musk had to say. As tech honchos, when they make such statements, first of all, I'd like to know, how do you assess what they had to say?
Well, it was exciting and reassuring, I think, to hear Sam Altman talk about the need for some degree of regulatory action by the U.S. government. the European Union has just made a first step at AI regulation, and it's a fairly aggressively anti-AI piece of regulation. I think the United States has an opportunity to do something a little more nuanced and a little more interesting that balances more thoughtfully the innovation opportunities that AI brings along with managing the risks. There's a big difference between artificial and general intelligence and what currently exists, or what's even on the near-term roadmap over the next decade or so from organizations like OpenAI. I think Elon Musk is causing a little bit of stress in the world that we're not very close to. AGI is not something that we're going to have for years and years. I mean, a decade out at a minimum. And so we have plenty of time to figure out. And even if we do have artificial general intelligence, which is talking to an AI like you or I would, you wouldn't know that it's not that. The ability for that to be fully integrated into our society in such a way that it could cause the kind of problems that he's generating all this drama around is really not on the cards.
And that's why, that brings me to my next question, the most basic of it all. Should we be scared of artificial intelligence?
Not at all. I think, we'll see disruptions. We'll see changes, just like there were changes when the automobile was invented and the horse and buggy, went away. People who made horseshoes for horses had to go off and, get retrained and find new jobs, and they started making cars. And then in the late 1970s, Toyota and other companies used AI to make manufacturing lines more efficient. And so there'll be changes, jobs change, the skills people need to work change. 50 years ago, you didn't have 100 million software developers, right? So we'll see disruptions, we'll see changes, we'll see a reorientation of the work, a far cry away from, evil robot overlords coming after us.
But that's actually one of the dystopian fears. But having said that, let's also refer to the Reuters Ipsos poll that found that number of Americans who foresee adverse outcome from AI is triple the number of, in fact, those who don't, 61% to be precise. Why are such a broad swatch of so many Americans worried about the negative effects of AI?
There are really two pieces, in my opinion, that are represented by that survey. The first is, in the United States right now, it's a pretty negative, environment right now emotionally. And I think there's a lot of fear in a lot of circles. And this is just another thing that people can be afraid of. And there's a lot of hyperbole around it, especially in the media here in the United States. The second is, we don't really know what AI is. I would argue, as someone who's been in the field for 30 years, that what OpenAI is doing right now is not actually artificial intelligence. It's technically machine learning. And so we don't even define terms correctly. And so I feel like that Reuters survey was probably doing a little bit of a disservice by not defining artificial intelligence correctly, because we don't have 350 million computer scientists in the United States. So when you ask hundreds of millions of people who don't know what something is, are they afraid of it? It's very easy for them to be made to be afraid of it.
Right. Let me now end by asking you about what Elon Musk has had to say. He's criticized the ChatGPT maker for turning towards a for-profit model. What's more dangerous, profit motivations of companies like Google or open source information?
Well, that's a great question, and one that we're going to struggle with for a long time. Without open source technology, the internet wouldn't exist and it wouldn't operate today. I go all the way back to working on early parts of the internet, and it was all open source, and that's how it spread all over the world with such speed and such power. And I wouldn't be able to be talking to you right now if it wasn't for open source.
Sure.
So open source is a key component of our civilization right now. Profit motivations and profit models of companies like Facebook and Google and others are far more dangerous. You look at the social media manipulations that happen in the United States over presidential elections and other political functions. Those have far more of a detrimental impact on civilization.
Right. I think speaking to you has been extremely insightful, and I might change my own views on AI after speaking to you. Sultan, thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you for having me.
And with that, there's some piece of very disturbing news coming in as Britain's Prince Harry, his wife Meghan Markle and her mother were involved in a near catastrophic car chase. That's the breaking news that we are bringing to you on this newscast. The royals were chased by paparazzi photographers after they attended an awards ceremony in New York. This incident involved half a dozen cars with blacked out windows driving dangerously and putting the lives of the couple and Meghan's mother, Doria Ragland, in danger. According to Harry's spokesperson, the couple was shaken by this incident but were otherwise unharmed. Let's also listen into what the New York mayor has to say.
You know, the press, paparazzis, you know, they want to get the right shot, they want to get the right story. But public safety must always be at the forefront. The briefing I received, you know, 2 of our officers could have been injured. New York City is different from a small town somewhere. You shouldn't be speeding anywhere, but this is a densely populated city. And I think all of us, I don't think there's many of us who don't recall how his mom died. And it would be horrific to lose an innocent bystander during a chase like this, and something to have happened to them as well. So I think we have to be extremely responsible. I thought that was a bit reckless and irresponsible.
All right, I'm also joined in by CNN News 18 Sanjay Suri, who's joining me live from London right now. Sanjay, thank you for joining in. You heard what the New York mayor has to say. He's in fact gone on to call the paparazzi reckless. It's almost a deja vu moment for Harry, having seen his mother go through a similar kind of an ordeal. In fact, not an ordeal, something that cost his mother her life. What are you learning in terms of how the paparazzi behaved?
Well, we did hear also from the mayor, whom we just heard a short while back, that he says this was very serious, but he says he doubts that the chase lasted all of 2 hours. But he said even a 10-minute chase would be very serious, potentially very dangerous, even lethal. And of course, we all recall that event back in 1997. Now, the fact is that the couple and their mother, Meghan's mother, were pursued by paparazzi as soon as they left this hotel in Manhattan. The claim from Harry's spokesperson is that this was a 2-hour chase. The New York Police Department has confirmed that there was an incident like this, and in the words of the New York Police, the transportation of the 3 was made very challenging by the paparazzi. According to Harry's spokesperson, this was a near catastrophic event, and there were near collisions. Cars were driving on the pavements, they were jumping red lights, they were backing down one-way streets, there were cars intercepting them from the side. This seems to have been quite traumatic and certainly potentially very dangerous.
Absolutely, and does take us back to the late Princess of Wales, who died in the year 1997. I am afraid I'm running out of time. Many thanks to you, Sanjay, for bringing in those inputs. Meanwhile, UK's King Charles has now hosted musicians, actors and television personalities at the Buckingham Palace today. The event also included winners of Prince's Trust Award, a British youth charity set up by then Prince Charles in the year 1970. Here's me leaving you with these visuals. Thank you so much for watching.
How are you? Good to see you again. We missed you yesterday, Your Majesty.
I was going to show without you.
Mr. James.
We did.
It's wonderful. We love it.
We always have the things to do on the
that these people started. Conversion story started from my college days, and it's
a very warm welcome. You're watching CNN.
Like what depicted in picture, they.
A very warm welcome. You're watching CNN News 18 Global with me, Akansha Swaroop. Let's begin with a top development that's making headlines across the world. The much anticipated Quad Summit, which was scheduled in Sydney next week, has now been cancelled. The US President Joe Biden had to cut short his trip to Asia to deal with the debt crisis back at home. Biden had been planning to travel to Sydney for the Quad Summit as part of a week-long Asia tour, which includes the G7 summit in Hiroshima and a significant stopover in Papua New Guinea for a meeting with Pacific Island leaders. After the later cancellation, Biden will just attend the G7 summit and fly to sit for the black debt ceiling negotiations. According to Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, the Quad leaders would instead have discussions in Japan. So that doesn't mean that there will be no meet at all. In fact, it will happen not in Australia but in Japan, where all four leaders would be present.
They try to commit suicide.
President Joe Biden trademark pledge. America is back.
They were at the verge of suicide, and luckily I was brought to Arshavidya Samajam, and I realized my mistake, and I could come back. Otherwise, I have ended up
as an international embarrassment that will not go unnoticed by China. From small Pacific Island nations to the territory of Guam, the United States has been trying to increase its military footprint across the Indo-Pacific, only to bolster a line of defense against an increasingly assertive
Basically, Chitra ji comes from a communist background family, and she practiced Islam. Being born in a Hindu family, she was practicing Islam for more than 15 years, and she had converted into Islam as Nasreen. She had changed her name. Her name was Chitra, and she had converted as Nasreen. She practiced Islam for 15 years, and then she had become so radicalized, like one of the scenes in the movie depicts when her father had a heart attack. When he heard about her, the news of her conversion, she said, "I don't care, I don't want to go and meet him." That's exactly, that's one incident that's depicted in the movie.
I'm cutting my trip short.
She was very emotional because of that. And finally, she came to Arshavidya Samajam, and very quickly, the 15 years of Islamic studies and what indoctrination was fed into her brain
and I spoke today with Prime Minister Albanese
very soon, and now she's a full-time full-timer with Arshavidya Samajam, one of our senior teachers, and she's herself been able to counsel more and more people and bring them back.
Falling on the debt is simply not an option.
Not love jihad, mine also was an ideological inclination. I was working, and my workplace colleagues tried to influence me into Islam.
Lose their jobs and their international reputation
was successful in injecting
a
pro-Islamic mindset in me, and I started
the Quad
distancing
Leaders
myself
meeting
from my family.
will not be going ahead in Sydney
those,
next week.
Aversion
we
towards
will
our
be
customs, our culture,
having
and all
that discussion
and again,
between Quad leaders.
It was only because I came to Arshavidya Samajam that I did not convert, and I did not get more and more radicalized and did not go to a different path. And I am today standing before all of you and talking. It's all because of Arshavidya Samajam and Acharya Shri K.R. Manoj ji.
Now, Joe
and
Biden
we are fighting for this cause even now, and it's our life mission. All of us, almost 25 people, we are full-timers of this. We have faced such a situation and come back a full-timers today in this institution.
What's your story? Republicans will likely accuse him of caring more about hanging out with foreigners
Adira
than
belongs to
Americans.
Castlewood.
Back at home,
In
Biden assures that the
2017, she
negotiators
left
will
home
continue
writing
to
a
make
22-page
progress on
letter to
avoiding
her
a
parents
default.
that
But
she
the House
is leaving
Speaker,
home
Kevin
because she
McCarthy,
wants to
claims
convert
that
into
the two
Islam,
sides remain
and why
far
they should
apart
also convert
and
into
an
Islam if they
agreement
want to
to
have her
lift
back.
the
She cannot accept non-Muslim, her non-Muslim parents as family because now she identifies herself as a Muslim. And she gave a media interview saying that she's no more Adira and she's now Aisha. And when the case was heard in the court sent her back to her parents. They said that if you want to be a Muslim, if you want to continue Islamic studies, do that in your house. And that's how she was able to come to Arshavidya Samajam. And from there, she underwent these courses and counseling from Acharya ji. And finally, when she came out of that mindset, she gave a press conference that she
defaulting on the debt
was
is
once
simply not an
converted
option.
as Aisha,
Our
but
economy
now
would
she's
fall
coming back
into
to Sanatana
recession.
Dharma, and why
It
she's
would
coming
devastate
back, and
retirement
how she was
accounts, increase
radicalized,
borrowing costs,
and all the,
according to Moody's, nearly 8
exposing all
million
the
Americans will lose their jobs, and their international
the
reputation
strategies
will
or
be damaged
network
in the
that's working
extreme
behind
if we let
converting
that
and
happen.
brainwashing people.
It's disappointing
and
that
caught
our
media attention
discussions
during
in the
that time. It was
congressional
in
Republicans have not
2017.
been willing to discuss raising revenues,
Shruti,
but
like,
policy differences
when this
between
got
the
written
parties
to
should
a
not stop
society,
Congress
how
from
the
avoiding
society
default.
responds? Did they
I
accept
made
this
clear
goal?
again today's meeting that default
the
is not an
society
option.
accepts, but a
America
few
pays
number
its
of
debts,
people
pays its
will
bills. There will be
criticize
plenty of
them, will
time to
insult
debate the
them,
policy differences.
including me also.
But the country
In
has
our
never,
Facebook,
never
under our
defaulted
Facebook
on our
posts and
debt,
all,
and we never
very
will.
insultingly
I
they'll
think we
speak. Majority comments
set the
coming
stage
from
to
the
carry on
opposite,
further conversations.
group who were
You know, we only have
targeting us
15 days
in
really to go.
radicalization and all, no? So
We've got to find a
this
way
all,
that we can
all
curve our spending,
a group of people
raise
are
our
there
debt
who are
limit,
ready to
and
comment
also
all the
grow
time.
our economy.
But it doesn't
And,
hurt us.
The president
doesn't
agreed
stop
to
us.
appoint a couple people from his administration to sit down and negotiate directly with my team, so I found that to be productive. But we've got a lot of work to do in a short amount of time. It is possible to get a deal by the end of the week. It's not that difficult to get to an agreement.
The bottom line is that we all came to agreement that we were going to continue discussions in the way that I believe Speaker McCarthy described.
Yes,
which
it
was agreed
is
to
a
by
7-8
all of
years
us in the
long
room
journey.
together.
And to me, it
and
is a full circle.
hopefully we can
Because
come to an
I
agreement. We
started
don't have much
journey
time,
with them,
but default
and
is just
अभी
the
भी मुझे याद है,
worst alternative.
जिस दिन मैं पहले
And
बार
the
श्रुति